Hey everybody, it's Matt. Welcome back to the Journey Church podcast. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you can automatically get our weekly episodes. And you might want to go ahead and subscribe to our Journey YouTube channel as well. You'll find messages, music, interviews, inspiring stories, and more for you all right there. Now, I hope this episode helps you take your next step in following Jesus.
Probably most of you in the room don't realize this, but 21 years ago this September, Matt Johnson, my old college roommate, came to me and my wife Sarah and asked us to go to dinner at Cracker Barrel right down the road. And he said, hey, I think we should start a church here in Murray, and not just any church, but a church that's really, really focused on the people who don't really like church, and to help them navigate what would it look like to come to church and find out who Jesus is and make it welcoming and easy for them to navigate taking a step toward Jesus. What do you think? And my wife and I at the time were attending a little church out in the county with her parents, and we had just had the first grandbaby of the family, and we're holding this little baby as we approach her parents and go, hey, we're leaving to go start a church. And there's this whole moment where I looked at her dad and I goes, don't worry, we'll be back in a year. 21 years later, right? So just so you know, my wife and I, looking back over the last 20 years, we celebrate 20 years at a church this September. Do not miss September 7th, by the way. It's going to be a wonderful celebration. But I got to thinking about what my wife and I appreciate most about the last 20 years of Journey Church. And I think I could nail it down in the fact that every time God presented us with a challenge or a thing, an opportunity for us to step into, He also brought along the people like you guys to make it work and accomplish. And so I just wanted to show you some pictures from the past that they're not like amazing pictures. You'll see how much digital photography has changed in 20 years. That's one of the things you'll learn. But let me show you one of the first services we had at the Curris Center. We started out in the Curris Center. Here we are in the Curris Center with an awesome setup. That's me up there speaking. Huh, isn't that cute? You can't tell that it's me because I'm white. And so I blend right in with all that. That's why we have a darker background now. I'm just kidding. I don't know if that's true. But I got to look at this picture and I was like, man, some of these people, I actually recognize a few of the heads in there. And there are people that are still around. That's pretty cool. But those people that are there in the beginning, you know, we had some things come along. Like, we wanted to do some things out in the community and before the community. And so we went out in the community. And this is, I don't know, Brett Shoecraft. I don't know if y'all know Brett and Mackenzie Shoecraft. They've been around since they were college students, but they came real adults. Yeah. Because a lot of you adults people didn't show up at our church because it was on a college campus and it was mostly young college students who were there, and you didn't think we were a real church. So we had to convince you by going out in the community and doing things like painting your kids' faces to convince you, like, no, we're real. You can come see us at the Curris Center. We had some real people come along, and then we had an opportunity to give away some coats to some kids at local school systems. So we collected coats and put them together in the Upper Curris Center and organized them. We had people come along and help finance that and then help deliver those coats and organize that and do all that. And that was amazing. And then this next picture is not of anybody else, but it's me and my kids when they were younger. But this is the reason I chose this photo is because at one point we actually had families coming. And the Curris Center we had to rent every space that we could in the Curris Center at one point. And so Chick-fil-A used to be our elementary area, but we realized for a mom coming for the first time with her kids, do you realize what she would have to do? Have you ever been in the Curris Center? You walk in the Curris Center, hey, drop off your kindergartner right here, and then you can walk up 2 flights of stairs and be a long way away from them. Like, that's a hard convince, right? So we had a whole group of people who made the first floor of that, and they joined in and made that feel like a really safe space, a welcoming space, a fun space. And this is a picture from when we did Father's Day with all the superheroes, and, you know, of course I'm a superhero to my kids. They think that now. Yeah. And then when we tried to get groups going, we were like, man, we need better to community. You guys, we just hired this guy as our high school and middle school coordinator, Mitch Holtman. That's him right there as a college student. Isn't that cool? Yeah, I know. So these people joined in, and I don't know about you, but this guy looks way older now. You guys know Root? Yeah, I know. I'm just joking. It's not true, right? See him in the suite after. That's Rudy Otway. You can't tell, but that's Rudy. And then we got an opportunity to actually do, does anybody remember Luo and buying canvases painted by kids from Nicaragua? Anybody remember that? Yeah, a few hands, right? So we took a group of people down to Nicaragua because we were supporting a safe house for kids who were basically neglected and abused, and we were supporting a school that was inside the city dump of Managua, there in Nicaragua. And so in that city dump, we were supporting a school, and people came along and bought canvases and sent money, and for people they didn't even know, right, to send it down there. So we took that resource down there, and then, guys, the Cura Center, the parking was terrible, and the kids' space was just all over the place, and we were like, where else can we go? And we sat down one night. Look at little Matt Johnson. Look at that little face. And then, so we sat down in his living room one day and was like, where do we go next? And the CFSB Center. So we did this whole campaign. You guys, if you guys are around here, you may remember doing a seat for everyone. Remember doing that campaign? And we had to buy new equipment. We had to buy bigger screens. We had to buy bigger speakers because it wasn't going to work in that setting. And this was the setup in the CFSB Center. And what I love about this photo is the women's bathroom's right up here. You didn't notice until I pointed it out, did you? But and I know I point that out because we're so amazing. I point that out because people, guys, we would not have made all these steps without you guys and people coming along to make sure it could happen, to reach the next wave of people. And then we thought, man, the CFSB Center, there's no kid space in it. We're using a loading dock for our middle school and elementary kids. We're using locker rooms for preschoolers. Like, this is not good. Nobody's going to bring their kids here except crazy people. Those of you who've been around for a while, you were crazy. So we were like, we've got to build a space that feels like it's safe. And COVID hit, but we did some outdoor services. We baptized some folks, and we looked at a bunch of you and said, hey, to reach the next wave of people, we've got to build a place. Can you help us build it? And some of you came along. And then since then, some of you came along since then. And I just want to help. This is why my wife and I love being a part of this church, is because over and over and over again, the opportunities that God put in our way, people came along to help us go to that next step, and without them, we could not have done it. Without you, we would not be here today reaching the people we're reaching now. And I just love this about our church. We've just never stopped trying to figure out how to stay focused on the people who are not here yet. That has been the challenge for 20 years. It's going to be the challenge for the next 20 years, because all of us in this room, the tendency is to think about ourselves and who we are and what we need, and not think about the people who have not come in the doors yet, who have not thought it's possible to come to a place like this, to experience what you've experienced with Jesus moving your heart and helping you realize what it is to surrender and yield. And so that's why we've been doing this series. The Acts of Us, all summer long, has really been about us realizing that the story of the first church, the early disciples in and around Jerusalem, and as they scattered out, what it looks like for them as they try to figure out what the story of God was asking them to do. And then listen, for us to continue that story. We are a part, the end of Acts is not done. We are still the church trying to figure out, how do we keep spreading this message of good news about who Jesus is and what he's done for us? How do we become, remember what we are from Acts chapter 1, the very first week? He asked us to be, anybody remember the word? Witnesses. What? Well done, front row right up in here. Witnesses, right? Just to be willing people to talk about the fact that Jesus has changed their life. He doesn't ask you to teach them all the things. He doesn't ask you to go out and do amazing things. He just asks you to be a witness to what God has done in your life, and then to be partners with him in the work that he's asking us to do. Come along and be a partner with me as we do this throughout the whole world, so we can let the whole world know that I have sent my son Jesus to die for them. He came back to life to offer them a new chance at living. It's amazing. Help me spread it. And then all it takes is just a little bit of surrender from us to yield, to surrender maybe some things that we don't even need in our lives, things that we're focused on that are actually pulling us away from the most fulfilling moments in our lives. And then to do this together as a church, as a group, as a unified group of people who are doing it together. This is the call of Acts. And this is the story we all get invited into. And this is what I want to help you understand. I'm going to give you the challenge question now. I haven't even done the message yet. Here's the challenge. You ready for the challenge for this week? Yeah, you are. Here's the challenge. Will you help us to reach our full potential as a church? Would you be willing to help us, whatever the next wave of opportunity is to help people connect to Jesus? Would you be willing to help us make that next step into reaching the people who are not here yet? That's the challenge of today. And how am I going to get there? Well, we're going to go to Acts and look at what they did. We're going to look at Acts, and hopefully today what I help you understand is that you really are needed. For whatever God is putting in our path as the opportunity of what's next, we need you to be a part of this movement in order to reach the next wave of people who are not here yet. And without you, we will not be our full potential. We'll still operate, but we won't be at full capacity. We won't be running smoothly. We won't be going just as far as we need to go without you. So we're going to start where we kind of ended off last week. If you weren't been around, I'm going to catch you up a little bit of background over the last few weeks. But here's where I want to start the story. The story of Acts, the church gets persecuted. Let's read this part. Now those who had been scattered by the persecution that broke out when Stephen was killed. Remember a couple weeks ago we talked about Stephen was killed, right? It caused a great persecution to break out. Church people had to scatter everywhere, all over the place. They went everywhere. They got out of Jerusalem. A few little folks stayed in Jerusalem as a church there in Jerusalem to hide out and stay, but most people had to get out of town. And it was a terrible time. And they traveled as far as Phoenicia, Cyprus, and Antioch. Now, I know you don't know those places. I didn't know. If you know those places, awesome. Great job, history, geographic nerd. But I didn't know. I would kind of like, I think Cyprus. I think I know where Cyprus is. I wanted to show you a map because it helps me to kind of think about logistics and geography. So here's where they traveled. Jerusalem down here. Everybody's down here, scattered. They end up in Cyprus. I'd like to be a missionary to Cyprus. Looks like a great island. Phoenicia's over here, and Antioch's way up here. I know that's not super clear, okay? But if you can see those cities. Now, Antioch, that's 300 miles to Antioch. You're like, 300 miles isn't that far. We could drive that in no time. Right, you could drive it, teenagers. I get it, okay? Let's remember first century. No cars, right? Most people didn't have even the resources to be able to make the travel in a caravan. Like you're walking this thing, right? You're walking, no wagons, no covered wagons, okay? So they're walking all this way. To walk 300 miles and to make this trek, if you were going to go from Jerusalem to Antioch, that is a 15 to 20-day journey if you're just carrying what's on your back and you're making the trip. So even longer if you have lots of supplies to take with you. This is not an easy trip. And what were these Jewish people who were persecuted and spreading out all over, what were they doing? Well, they were doing what God told them to do. They were spreading the word only among the Jews. Stop and pause. These are Jewish people in Jerusalem who became Jesus followers, who became followers of Jesus. And the mission was to go and tell the world, right? And they didn't move very quickly. And so the persecution happened and they were kind of forced to move and the movement started spreading. And let's just be graceful on them for just a second. If you had to leave your home, if I had to leave my home today and go, when I move to a new city and when I go somewhere, I'd look for people who kind of lived like me and looked like me because that would be the easiest way to get in and get a job and move on with my life. And these people were no different. But this was not their mission, right? This message is not just for the Jews who lived in the Jewish communities where they went to find comfort. Let's be honest, they had to go find jobs, and it wasn't like they could go down to the local McDonald's and put in an application. Like, this was a big deal. They gave up land and businesses where they lived in and around Jerusalem, and they left and they went to find an economic way to take care of their family. And so they went to people they knew. I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying part of the deal, though, was not just to share this with only the Jews. And luckily, what we're about to read, it didn't stay that way. Or else, I don't know about you, but I don't have any Jewish heritage in my family tree. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for what happens next in the story. And most likely, all of us in this room would not be here talking about being Jesus followers or considering being Jesus followers or wherever you're at in your faith journey. It wouldn't be a possibility to do this if it weren't for what happens next. So some of them, however, men from Cyprus and Cyrene, went to Antioch and began to speak to Greeks also, telling them the good news about the Lord Jesus. Stop and pause and think about what this took. A group of Jews watching all their Jewish Christian friends do their thing in the communities and talk to other Jews about Jesus, and suddenly they have this crazy, harebrained ideas. Well, I work with Joe down at the docks. Should I tell him about Jesus? You think that's okay? Can you imagine what that felt like for the first people thinking, like, can we go tell the lady down at the market? Can I talk to her about it? I mean, she doesn't live like us at all. Can you imagine in that day, 300 miles separated two very different cultures? In Jerusalem, this Jewish culture and the way they ate and the way they lived and what they did and how their practices and their customs was totally different. And they would have never interacted with people from Antioch. It's not like when they went up there, this was a brand new world. These are people like, they eat that? Are you kidding me right now? Bacon? That was a good thing. But I'm just saying, but they didn't know, right? They didn't know there was a whole different customary shift for them. And for them to go, what if we told these Greeks? I mean, they don't live like us. They actually are kind of gross and they don't do things like us. But what should they know about Jesus? And luckily they did it, right? And what happens? Let's see what happens. The Lord's hand was with them. Of course it was. This was the plan all along. I'm going to send you to Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and to where? The uttermost parts of the earth. You're going to go everywhere and tell everyone that you walk along beside about Jesus. And a great number of people believed and turned to the Lord. This is what's crazy amazing. These few little people who are unnamed. Paul got his name in the list, and he even killed Christians before he became a missionary. We couldn't get a shout out. I'd be a little bit sore, right? These guys were not mentioned. I think it may have been on purpose. Because I think this movement blew up so quick, they couldn't even keep track. Well, who started this? I don't know. Somebody started talking to so-and-so down there, and man, it just went through the neighborhood. Nobody probably knew where it started because a great number of people, boom, start believing in Jesus. And imagine this moment in the church when the Jewish people realize God's using Greeks. What? They come to Jesus and they believe in Jesus' death and resurrection, that he's alive and he's well, and the Spirit's moving in them to do things, and they're changing the way they live to match up with the way Jesus lived, and they're doing... Wow, this was a huge moment of celebration. Except the people down in Jerusalem, remember, that's a long way away, but I don't know how long it took, but they get news. Here's what happened. News of this reached the church in Jerusalem, and they sent Barnabas to Antioch. Now, I'm not going to read too much into this, but listen, maybe it took months for news to travel back that these Greeks are starting to believe in Antioch, right? I don't know about you, but if I were a Jewish believer back in Jerusalem where the whole kind of movement started and I had been with Jesus and I had watched Jesus and they told me like, hey, these people who are not Jews, man, they're believing and following Jesus left and right. I'd be like, yeah, but did they get it right? Like, but are they doing it the right way? Like, are they saying it in the right way? Are they doing the right things? Are they actually responding to what Jesus, because they probably don't realize what Jesus was really here to do because he's our Jesus, right? So I don't want to read too much in it, but here's what happens. These guys at least have the wisdom enough to be like, hey, we trust you, Barnabas. Because we read about Barnabas last week. Remember, Barnabas they got the nickname the encourager, right? And he's the one that brought Saul along when nobody else trusted Saul because he was off killing Christians for a while. And Saul turns around and is like, I believe in Jesus. He's the one who's like, all right, I believe you, Saul. Come on. This is the guy, and they trust him. And it's like, you got to go check this out. Go see. Is this real? Is this the real deal? Are they really doing it? Is this really something that we should be paying attention to and helping support? So what does Barnabas do? He runs up there in 20 days. And when he arrived and saw what the grace of God had done, he was glad and encouraged them all to remain true to the Lord with all their hearts. Let me ask you just a personal question really quick. Have you ever had this picture of what your life and success and your joy and your purpose would feel like? And you chase your joy and your purpose and your fulfillment in life through your work or through your family or through having kids or whatever it is that you think of as like, once I get there, once I'm the boss and I have my own business and I can run things and I know how to do things better than anybody else and I can kind of own this business and make it. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with owning your own business and knowing how to do things better and owning a business and running it well. There's nothing wrong with that. But have you ever gotten there and been like, yeah, it's not what I thought it would be? Or have you ever gotten the thing that you want and you bought the thing because you got the money that you thought and you got the job and you bought the thing and you're like, it's not as great as I thought. Have you ever considered the fact that because you were created by God, you were called by God, and you're worked into the story that God is telling, have you ever thought about the fact that maybe the most wonderful, fulfilling, purposeful moments will be found when you step into where God is already at work? and you didn't have to do anything for it? Think about this moment as Barnabas walks into this town and he realizes for the first time, holy moly, the Greeks really are believing in Jesus. He didn't do anything for it. He didn't work for it. And he walks right in and he's like, guys, we got to get to work. Guys, this is awesome. Yes, y'all keep going with that. Yes, that's a great thing you're doing for those people over there. Oh my goodness. Yes, start that study over there and get in that home and y'all talk about that. Yes. And he just jumps right in because the grace of God had done the work and all he had to do was step in to be fully fulfilled and fully purposeful in that moment. Have you watched for God at work where you are? Because Barnabas shows up and he's like, yes, I want to do what God is doing right here, right now. I want to be a part of that because this is unprecedented and amazing. And so here's what it says. Barnabas, he was a good man full of the Holy Spirit and faith. And then a great number of people were brought to the Lord. We had a great number already. And now Barnabas comes along and all he does is do a little bit of encouragement and boom, it doubles. It just goes brush fire, right? The whole community is changed. Antioch, the city, is changed. Listen, people's lives are being changed all across the board, so much so that Barnabas is like, man, this is amazing. Saul, you got to come help me. So for a whole year, it says, Barnabas and Saul met with the church and taught those great numbers of people. The disciples were called Christians first at Antioch. Hey! If you didn't know that, here it is. You know why we call ourselves Christians? Because the people at Antioch, they're the ones that started it. How do you get a name like Christian? Now, you break the name Christian down, it just means Christ-like. It means little Christians. It means little Christs. It means people who are so much like Jesus that we're just going to call you Christian. You're so much like Christ in the way you respond and act in situations. Man, you just look like Jesus everywhere you go and in everything you do. That's pretty cool. I don't know about you, but I hope one day, I'm not there yet, but somebody's like, Jarrod, that guy's pretty close. Like he got really close to being like Jesus. That would be awesome. That's the goal. And here they are. How did they get this name? Because, the movement's just going boom, 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 boom. Everybody's coming to Jesus all over the place. Great numbers. They're teaching and blah, 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 blah. Well, what about to happen is bad. Bad things are about to happen. But it's the way the early Antioch Christians, full of Jews and Greeks combined together, respond that makes all the difference in the world. Watch this. During this time, some prophets came down from Jerusalem to Antioch. One of them, named Agabus, stood up and through the Spirit predicted that a severe famine would spread through the entire Roman world. And this happened during the reign of Claudius. And Luke drops in this little nugget for people to be like, hey, you remember that famine back in Claudius' day? Remember how bad it was and all over the region? It wasn't just one little location. It was all over the whole place, the whole Roman world experience. Remember how bad that was? This is how the Antioch people became known as Christians, because when this thing started to happen, they did something nobody else did and nobody else thought to do. They asked different kinds of questions. And here's what they asked themselves. Who will need our help? And how can we help? Yeah, they asked the questions. In this moment, they're asking the questions. How? Because we know this movement of Jesus is not just about us, it's about other people. How are we supposed to respond to this as people who are following Jesus? What do we do when things get scarce? Here's what they did. The disciples, as each one was able. First of all, we're not talking about the disciples down in Jerusalem. We're talking about the disciples. They called the disciples, these people who are following Jesus right here in Antioch. The disciples, as each one was able, decided to provide help for the brothers and sisters living in Judea. Do you guys remember where Jerusalem is located? Where's Jerusalem located? In the area of Judea. Here's what these Antioch followers of Jesus did. Hey, you know the doubters down there in Jerusalem? We don't really care about them. We don't care about them at all. In fact, this famine's coming. Let's take care of our own. let's make sure that we have enough in our basements and our closets. And so when everybody else dies off from this famine, because famine really killed people in those days, when those people die off, at least there'll be those of us here who still believe in Jesus. And then once the famine's gone, we can have this perfect, wonderful Jesus community right here in Antioch because we're the ones who survived. And let's make sure, no matter, it's sad that those other people are going to die and they're going to go, but let's be honest, let's take care of our own and make sure we got enough to make it through. No. I don't know about you, but this is when this becomes real to me. And we're reading this story and I'm going, if this happened right here, right now, how would I respond? Would I be willing to ask, what can I do and who needs my help? Or would I be focused on just me and mine? And these people were first called Christians because they did what they were able to do for the people they would never meet and would never know. They sent money and resources, and I said it took 15 to 20 days to get to Jerusalem. That's if you're walking with a pack. What would it take to send enough grain, supplies, seed, tools, whatever it took to make sure that the people in Judea had what it took to survive a famine? How long do you think it would take to move those kinds of resources without a train, plane, or automobile? You ever thought about that? This was a months-long or year-long commitment of sending help. And it's not that they didn't take care of their own families. It's not that they didn't look around and be like, hey, we got to make sure we can eat too. But they also looked and said, hey, I might have a little extra here. I think they're going to have it worse off than us. Maybe we should put aside this much to send down. And in their wisdom, here's what they did. This they did, sending their gift to the elders by Barnabas and Saul. Hey, Barnabas and Saul, Jerusalem Christians sent you guys to us, and you have helped us so much. You've made such a difference and encouragement to us. In fact, we didn't know if we were getting it right. This whole Greeks becoming believers things, we weren't sure it was going to work. We didn't know how to navigate it. And you guys have encouraged us and supported us and taught us how to do this. And listen, as a thank you, can we send you guys back with the food that those people are going to need to make it through this famine that's coming? Can you send this gift to us? And people all around said, that is what Christian looks like. Let me ask you this. Do you think we as a church, do you think we would be able to fight this gravitational pull that everybody feels to be insider focused? Do you think we could fight that? Because one of the things my wife and I said earlier, love about this church so much is that we haven't focused on what we need and what we want most as a church. We've tried to continually turn and make sure that nothing pulls us just to ourselves, but we always look out and try to figure out who needs our help and what can we do about it. What are we able to do? I don't have a magic wand or a miracle to happen, but what if we all together could figure out how to help those people over there? For 20 years, you know what we've tried to be? Jesus-centered, others-focused, outward-facing. Everything you do here is about pointing people to Jesus. That's never going to change. Everything we do here is trying to make sure that we stay others-focused. We are for this community. Out there, out where, there's people around this whole world. Guys, Matt's told you before, we have a connection with a church in Andover, England. We're starting to get a connection with a church in Brazil that needs help. There are places all over this world that need help from somebody. And I'm not saying we can do everything for everybody, but what if we just continue to be Jesus-centered, others-focused, and outward-facing so that we don't just get caught up in what we need and what we want, but what out there could we do for people we never know and never meet? My biggest question for those of you sitting in this room, if you're not engaged in the mission of what we're doing, would you just pray about and consider the fact that we need you to go to the next opportunity? Those of us here cannot do this alone to reach the next wave of people who are not here yet. And there are people in all kinds of counties around this area. Do you guys realize we have people drive from McCracken, Graves, Henry County, Trigg County, Marshall County? It's not that me and Matt are amazing, okay? I promise you. You can watch way better people on YouTube any Sunday you want. Let me tell you what the difference is. The people who make the kids' area work, the parking lot work, and people who tell their neighbors, you should come because Jesus has changed my life. There are places around here that we can reach. So my challenge for you finally is this. Here's what my hope is. That 20 more years from now, we all look back as a group, and there's people that aren't here yet sitting beside you 20 years from now that you can look back and look at and go, hey, I'm so glad you're here. Because a group of us decided to go do blank in your community. And it's not because I want you to applaud me. I just want you to know that I'm so glad to have partnered with what God was doing in your life, and I was glad I was there to have you get here. Because together, I hope we choose to trust God, do what He asks us to do as a church, and then leave the rest to Him. Leave the rest to Him. I don't know what impact it'll make. I don't know what God wants to do by doing blank, blank, and blank, whatever's next. But I know this. I do not want to miss out on showing up in Antioch, having seen what God can do and going, yeah, I'm good. I'll go back to Jerusalem. I'm good. Hey, good job, guys. I'm out. I want to show up in Antioch and be like, God's doing this here? I'll see what I can do. Maybe all I need to do is clap a few hands and be like, y'all are doing a great job. Keep it up. Keep it up. Maybe I need to send a few resources to people who don't have any. Maybe I need to come alongside some folks and teach them what they do not know about the Bible so they can keep getting better and better at it. Whatever it is I can do to join in what God is doing, I want us all to do that together so that we don't miss an opportunity to see God move in our community and continue the book of Acts right here in Murray, Kentucky. Let me pray for you. Father in heaven, would you just give us the courage to face what it is you're asking us to do as a church? Would it help us to bond together and step in obedience? God, for our neighbors and the people who are not here yet, God, would you help us to notice them, to listen, to ask, to just be involved where you're working? God, would you help us to be aware of the number of people who still don't know that you love them? And as a church, God, whatever you bring our way in these opportunities around the world or locally or nationally, God, would you help us to figure out and ask the question, how can we help? What can we do? Who needs us right now? And God, I pray that we would respond like those people in Antioch so that people would look at us and say, those people are real Christians. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Hey, if you'd like more content like this, subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our Journey app to access all of our recent message content. And our app is the easiest way to share this content with a friend. For more information on our church or to find our app or our YouTube channel, just visit journeycalway.com. That's journeycalway.com. Thanks for listening.